when you combine faith with bold action, things start to happen in your life and things start to happen in your universe that you never could have predicted.
I would like to welcome Adam Kreek to the Productivityist studio to talk on the Productivityist podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
Well, it's great to be in studio instead of doing these things over the interweb in person.
It is.
It's
We're
so much nicer.
Yeah, we're actually filming it a widescreen version of this so that probably using some B-roll for my YouTube channel or something like that at some point. It's always good to have a Canadian Olympian on the program. It just raises my profile. It's responsible for me to do this. It's a really responsible thing for me to do.
That's a good ethic for you to for you to adhere to.
So you're the author of beyond your accolades through the Olympics and Rung program and all the other stuff, and speaking at TEDx, which we both spoke at a few years back. You are the author of The Responsibility Ethic, 12 Strategies Exceptional People Use to Do the Work and Make Success Happen. So when we first met, you were talking about failure. That's what you talked about at TEDx. And I want to kind of shift. How does failure play into this book here? Because I would imagine there's some congruence, like there's some definite, but did that exploration of failure lead you to doing this book, or was it just an element that you kind of expanded upon, or is it just kind of, was this a bit of a shift overall?
Well, there's 12 different ideas I explore within the responsibility ethic. The first one is failure. That's the first chapter. And I think it's great to start with failure. I know that we talk about failure a lot, I think, when, the philosophical space to do anything significant, you have to do things wrong and learn from it. And you have to be okay with failure, because fear of failure can prevent you from doing two things. One, it can prevent you from getting started. Two, it can prevent you from setting your goals large enough. So having a healthy relationship to failure is a very good thing. In my TED Talk, I do talk about seeking failure and using failure as a rallying cry to stretch yourself and to get more of what you want out of your life. In this book, the opening story is about our capsize in the Bermuda Triangle when we were in our rowboat, and then it moves into this idea of reflecting, learning, growing, so that you can let go of the emotional baggage that often comes around failure. And so often we confuse our facts, the facts of a situation, with our feelings about a situation, and our feelings will more often than not, overpower the facts, and then the feelings will overwhelm us. So the first step after you're dealing with a significant failure is to process the emotions. And if you're still getting triggered, but when you think about a failure, that means you still have more emotional work that you have to do to process it. And so reflect is the first one, process the emotion. The second one is more fun, which is learn, which is intellectual. It's writing things down, figuring out what went wrong about the failure, analyzing it. And then the third one is less fun, but it's very important, which is growth. Create new habits, change your habits, change the way that you live. And then if you emotionally process, intellectually process, create new habits, then you can let go of failure and continue living a better life.
Let's circle back to the word responsibility.
Yeah.
Because to me, I think, I'm a word nerd, so I think about the etymology of the word, like the idea of response.
Yes.
And then so most people, when they think about responsibility, I would imagine they think about being, in charge of, or, having maybe being willing to take agency over certain things. What do you think responsibility means, and what you've got the word ethic, so it's clearly tied to that, but what role does responsibility play in, not just in work, but in life in general?
Well, I like breaking it down in this way. We have the ability to choose our response to a given situation. And it's really easy in our life to point the finger and say, oh, if only my parents would have done this for me, or if I would have only had this job, or if I would have only taken this career path, or if only someone would have told me this 10 years ago, I would have blah, 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 blah. And so often we take the finger and we point it at other people and blame other things for our problems. And really the power comes when we point the finger at ourselves and understand, when you have to have some compassion for yourself as well, and forgiveness for yourself, and say, I have the ability to act upon this, these emotions that I generate in my body, these emotions that I generate in my spirit, and I can analyze them and act upon them, and I can make better decisions, and then I can, apply them. And I like the idea of ethic, because the first idea that comes to my mind is, a work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you do things. So the responsibility ethic is, your ability to choose your response, and how. And when I talk about ethic, how are you harnessing that ability to choose your response? And that's throughout the book.
It's like a code. Like an ethic is almost like a code to a degree. Like this is like we hear code of ethics, right? Well,
yeah.
Responsibility ethic would be a code you would follow. It's interesting because we do hear a lot of, and I hear a lot of this when it comes to time. It's like, it must be nice for you because you have all the time in the world. Like you have more freedom than I do, or there's no way I could do this because I have to be at work at this time, or I've got kids and all that stuff, and I think that comes back to what you're talking about with responsibility. Like you can't always change. Like we've heard this before. You can't change a situation, but you can change your response to it. Mm-hmm. And I think so in the book, you go over, the 12 strategies. I'm imagining, and I haven't had a chance to go through the book yet, that these 12 strategies will help you give a better response to when those situations arise, right?
Yeah, it will allow you to give you a better response to life's challenges, and that inner desire and that inner drive. The book's written for hungry people who want to achieve things, people who want to do more with their lives, people who want to get a little bit more out of their work, a little bit more out of their life. And so within the book, I talk about failure. I talk about goals, how goals can be toxic, and how they, if you set them improperly, they can really, infect your life in a wrong way. I talk about sharing leadership, the importance of sharing leadership. I talk about stress, effective reactions to stress. I talk about professionalism and how to show up and grind and enjoy effort, I suppose. Talk about coaching and mentoring, teamwork, resiliency, and then I talk about this idea of providence, which is, a little bit fluffier of a concept, but something I feel is very important.
Let's go into that a bit, because I know I don't want to go over all the strategies per se, but providence is one. Like as soon as I was going through the table of contents, I'm like, what do you mean by? I mean, providence sounds like it's. I don't think it's. I think it's fluffy in a way but it's not but it's still got this like quote, I guess, businessy kind of feel. Like a lot of people talk about like I have providence. Because a lot of people don't even know what it is.
Providence harkens back to faith. And I first heard about providence. There's an old quote that's often attributed to now I'm blanking on his name. He's an old German, the German Shakespeare. This guy's, whatever you can dream, not Nietzsche.
Because that would be weird. That would be weird. Never mind.
No, it's Goethe.
Oh, Goethe. Right.
Yeah.
Frederick Goethe, right.
And so he says, whatever you can dream or imagine, begin it now. And boldness has great power in it. And it was actually attributed to a Scottish mountain climber. He was the one who wrote that in the start of his book. And so the idea of providence is that faith plus bold action equals results. And so whatever you need to do to engage a deep level of faith, and then you need to have that courage to take the leap, then results happen. And so I would think, in the context of the productivityist and people interested in time management, how are you going to generate, ideal faith in an outcome? You have to have an element of planning, obviously. It's not like, I differentiate it from this idea of The Secret. I remember The Secret being
the law of attraction kind of things.
Yep. Is that, if I put out the right energy, then checks are going to come in the mail and things are going to happen. But that's not completely true.
It'll only take you so far.
Yes. You have to put in the effort.
Right.
And you have to put in the action.
I was watching last night, my daughter and I were watching Disney Plus just showed up.
Yeah.
We're recording this. So literally, we're recording this on November 13th, November 12th. The Vardy household was infected with Disney Plus. We watched, obviously, some of the stuff everybody else was watching, but we watched some of the Nat Geographic stuff. And one of the things I've been wanting to watch was Free Solo.
Okay, yes.
Which have you seen that film?
I have not seen Free Solo.
But you know of it. And we were watching it, and first off, there's a lot of holy smokes, this guy's crazy. And if you haven't seen, I'll put a link to it in the show notes because it's well worth your time, even just learning about what it was. But the climber, it wasn't just he had the faith that he could do it because he's done many free solo climbs. This was El Capitan was one thing no one had ever done that way. But when you watch him get ready to do it, the idea of faith, he has evidence of it to a degree because not just not science-based or anything like that, but just he's done it before, so he knows that it's almost like the next level. But it's a bold action he has to take. No one's done this before. Everyone is terrified. But as he's doing it, he's got this notebook, and he's saying, there's a part where he reads in his journal every step that needs he gets a toe hold here, thumb in here, half thumb, trust, all this stuff, and you're so as he's climbing this thing, he's not just trying to shoot up it. He would die. Anyone would die, but he would certainly, even the best guy would die. Because, and he said, one of his quotes was, if you are ever wanting to pursue perfection, the closest you can get is free solo climbing, because one mistake, you're dead.
You're dead.
So he had to map this, the planning part was so huge because it's not like he could just go and do it. He had to know, he had to have the ability to understand what he was getting into every step of the way, and the result, the outcome. And he actually, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a reason there's a whole movie. It's not like he just did it and that was it. There's a whole story behind it. So fascinating stuff.
Well, and this is the magic of providence, though, that when you combine faith with bold action, things start to happen in your life and things start to happen in your universe that you never could have predicted, that show up to help you out. And the universe, in my belief, has a way of helping you out and rewarding you when you do commit to something. And when you commit to something with faith and you're willing to take that bold action. And this is the idea of providence. And there's a great story in the final chapter where I'm driving down Highway 101. I'm at Stanford University. I'm training on Redwood Creek, and I have this old beat up diesel 1984 Jetta. I'm driving, and when you drive on the highway, you get into a bit of a meditative state.
Sure.
And so I was meditating about two years in the future. I was having kind of a projecting vision of what it would be like to stand on the podium of the Olympics, to be there with my teammates, what it would feel like. And I got this tingly feeling in my spine.
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps down the spine. And I was literally seeing it. I was creating something in my prefrontal cortex. I was seeing the future, and I was having faith that it was going to happen. And then I get to the water and I put in, a 4-hour training session on the water, and I get a massive workout in. So there's belief and there's faith, and then you put in the work.
That's just it.
And putting those two together, things start clicking into place for you. Well,
yeah, it's like John Maxwell said, talent is never enough. You can't just hope. And I've run across this speaking because I've taken improv Like I've got a background in improv and stand-up. And there's been points, and I'm working really hard to get past this, that you can, that training can become a crutch. You can go, well, I don't need to prepare nearly as much because I've done this before, or I'll wing it, which is like one of the worst things that you could possibly do.
Yeah.
But, and that works. It's kind of like cramming for an exam, right? Like it works until it doesn't.
Yes.
And then when it doesn't, you're like, you have a choice. Like you could say, and some people will say, oh, well, this is just a one-off, like, oh, well, whatever. Or you can say, this is a signal. Like, this is telling me that I'm not putting in enough effort.
Well, and the whole speaking thing is fascinating because I've been doing that since 2008, 11 years. And I was just reflecting upon this the other day because it only takes me an hour or two now to prepare for a speech. Mm-hmm. Whereas when I first started doing this, it was probably 100 hours for an hour of a speech.
Sure.
Sitting there, making the slides, writing things out, mapping it out, figuring out how I could put words together on stage for an hour or 90 minutes and keep people engaged and keep them following along with you. And it is amazing. And, and you have to put in the work.
Yep.
And once you put in the work, you have something in the bank, but that never precludes you from having to put in some work beforehand. You always have to freshen up. It reminds me of this story I heard from what's his name? He's the
Frederick Goth.
No, Frederick Goth. No. I think he's the British guy. He had a TED talk on education. Ken Robinson, and he tells the story of I was watching my friend play piano. Have you heard this one?
I have.
Okay.
But but my audience might not have.
I was watching my friend play piano, and I said, oh, I wish I could play piano like you. And his friend looks at him and says, no, you don't. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, no, you don't, because you're enjoying watching me play piano right now, but I don't think you'd enjoy practicing 5 hours a day. And let me tell you what, if I don't practice for a day, I notice. If I don't practice for a few days, people who know me notice. If I don't practice for a week, people who are just standing there, they start to notice. I have to be on my game and stay on top of it. Otherwise, my skill is off. So it's something that you have to do on a regular basis, especially when we're talking about, public speaking, something that's performance-based, something that you're getting up and you're in front of people on a regular basis. But I'd think about this for any skill that we're doing for life or work.
Meal planning is important because it prevents us from being a disappointed wreck when dinner time comes around and we have no clue what to make, or even if we have the ingredients to make the meal. It's a time and a money saver, but most importantly, it frees up valuable brain space. Creating a meal plan prepares us for the week to come and gives us peace of mind that we're organized and can feed ourselves and our family. That's why I do it, and that's why Plan to Eat helps me do it. Your subscription includes access to the Plan to Eat website and fully featured mobile apps on iOS and Android. And Plan to Eat gives you the tools to clip and organize recipes from any website, the ones your family loves and that fit your dietary preferences and needs. And you can create a meal plan around your schedule. Then what happens is the Plan to Eat software automatically creates an organized shopping list based on your plan. So sign up for your free trial at plantoeat.com/timecrafting. That's plantoeat.com/timecrafting. The coupon will be automatically applied to your account and can be used when you're ready to subscribe. It's valid for new customers only. Give Plan to Eat a try today.
We're going to take a break from the conversation right now, but when we come back, we're going to talk about deciding where to spend your time and how to make those decisions, what Adam recommends, as well as how he recommends you practice patience when you're doing something that has a definitive end, like his competition career did. But I want to talk to you about something that really never has to come to an end, and that's the amount of uses you can find with our sponsor for today's episode, Text Expander. You can save time typing and boost your productivity with Text Expander. I've been using Text Expander for years, and what it's allowed me to do, and it can do the same for you, is to make snippets for those things that you type repetitively and the things that you pretty much use everywhere, like word processors, email and messaging apps, and online forms. For the show notes, I have a template that I type in, so I immediately know how to automatically generate the template for the show notes. I have now started to use it for the different videos that I'm doing on my YouTube channel, which is over at timecrafting.tv. There are also free training webinars for Text Expander, which I strongly encourage you to check out. Power user tips from David Sparks. He's got one coming up this month in February. If you're listening listening to this. And then a support team and productivity co-webinar with Help Scout in March. So you've got 2 webinars that you can just learn how to make the most out of Text Expander with. All you need to do to get Text Expander for 20% off your first year is go to textexpander.com/podcast, and then go and check out Productivityist there. So when you get to that page, say you heard about Text Expander from the Productivityist podcast, that's a big help. So again, textexpander.com/podcast, you get 20% off of your first year, and then you'll keep using it like I did. And you never have to see your Text Expander career come to a close, because you'll find it's an indispensable tool in your productivity toolkit. I encourage you to check out textexpander.com/podcast today. Now I'd like to share with you my Productivityist podcast pick of the week. And I just mentioned David Sparks when it comes to Text Expander, but David Sparks has been hosting podcasts for a long time. Mac Power Users is one of them, but so is Focused. Focused is a show that's hosted by David Sparks and Mike Schmitz, and they talk about the best ways to get focused. They talk through their successes and failures along the way. And let's face it, like when it comes to productivity, we aren't always productive for every hour, every minute of the day. In fact, about an hour ago, I spent 47 minutes making my first ever rubber band ball. I posted it on Facebook. People said, "Is that a productive use of your time?" I said, "No, not really," but it was fun. And so what these guys talk about are just different ways that you can get focused. Some of their subjects are habits are greater than goals. I've been on the program as well. They talk about morning routines. They talk about rest as being a weapon. There are so many great episodes that these guys get into. So I want you to check out Focused. It's on the Relay.fm network, and it's my Productivityist podcast pick of the week. Now let's get back to my conversation with Adam Kreek here on the Productivityist podcast. Clear goals.
Yes.
Something you talk about.
Yeah.
So what is, like, because we've heard of SMART goals before.
Yes.
That's a bit, but what's a clear goal? Can you go into that?
A clear goal is the evolution of a SMART goal. So the SMART goal was invented in the late 70s, early 80s, because some manager or management consultant discovered that people weren't using their logical brain when they were setting goals. And so they said, they need to be specific, measurable, action-oriented,
results-oriented, results-driven. I can't remember.
And,
and time-bound. Time-bound, yes.
And so
if you have to try to remember what they are, that's a challenge.
It is. Well, and it's about sitting down, taking the time,
Sure.
going through the process.
Yeah.
But what I found, I was getting ready for this row across the ocean, and rowing across the ocean is actually quite easy when it comes to the actual process. The hardest part was actually building the administrative capacity of an organization to support a row across an ocean,
which is not what you would think about.
It's
the
not what
the
you
thing
think
that
about.
would get in people's way is rowing across the ocean. To me, I look at it from that big picture of it. That's hard. That's almost impossible. You're saying the actual rowing, a breeze. It's the other part. Like, again,
well, it's building spreadsheets.
Right.
And
Climbing the mountain is the easy part. No, figuring out the path up the mountain is the hard part, right?
yeah, figuring the path, making sure that you have finances and everything in place. And so going through that goal setting exercise, and I'd known SMART goals, I'd taught SMART goals for years to kids and to school kids. There was something missing. Mm-hmm. And again, SMART goals harness the EQ, or the
IQ.
SMART goals harness the IQ, and clear goals integrates EQ into it.
So there's some emotional intelligence involved.
Emotional intelligence. So the first one is C, collaborative. Who are you achieving your goal with? L is limited. So it's taking the SMART goal and incorporating into it. So how will someone who's not you know that the goal is complete? And what are the geographical limits? What are the time limits involved in this goal? Limited. CL. E is emotional. So why do you actually want to achieve this goal? So really harnessing that emotional side of our being. A is appreciable. So can you take this goal and break it down into small little steps, and so it can grow over time.
And you could probably feel like you're making progress.
Yeah, and you can feel like you're making progress.
Which is huge.
Oh, which is very huge. It's this small, you got to have small wins along the way. And you go through a process I call strategic momentum in the appreciable phase, where you take a 4-year goal, and then you figure out, where will I be year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. Then you take your 1-year goal and say, where will I be quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. Take your next quarter, where will I be month 1, month 2, month 3. Next month, where will I be week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. The next month, where will I be, or next week, where will I be day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. And then at the end of the process, you're actually doing something that day to move you towards that 4-year goal. And then the final one is refinable. So one of the issues with goal setting is that 3 months, 4 months, 6 months down the road, new information can come into play that will change the activation of your goal, or even the realization of your goal. So it's building in a form of strategic planning and a form of flexibility into the goal attainment process, because we know that life changes, things change, and we make the best plans, and the plans have to change. So one, it's recognizing that and giving yourself permission to change the goals. And the second part is to build out the best case, most likely case, and worst case scenario. And so when we go through the refinability piece, this is interesting too. People tend to not dream big enough or think big enough in their goals, because they have a fear of failure. And when I'm running through, like, with executives or senior executive teams, going through the clear process, and we're saying, okay, best case, most likely case, worst case. People can think of the worst case really easy. And then usually the best case and the most likely case are really close together.
Right.
There's not much difference. And you're saying, you're not thinking big enough. Tell me if, like, everything really, 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 really went right.
Right.
And so let's stretch that gap between what you think is going to happen and what could possibly go right for a change. And to a certain extent, we talked about providence, and there's an element of providence that becomes enacted when you can imagine things going really, really right, because your brain can start wrapping your head around, oh, if things really go well, yeah, okay, this could happen. And so then something happens in the subconscious. And
yeah, it's like, I'll give an example, maybe on a personal note. And I think that the clear goal setting actually really lends itself nicely to my monthly theming, where it's like, okay, what, who do I need to work with on, like, what collaborative elements need to be involved? Like, obviously it's limited because I'm using like 30 days, anywhere from 28 to 31 days, the emotional component of it, because when you're having family and stuff like that, there's all these things that can kind of appreciable, bringing it down, making it, and then the refinable, because in some instances, this month is my, I've got this one plan in mind. I have to be able to refine it, because it's not necessarily what I initially put in place when I planned my year in September. Things have altered, right? But to use the whole best case, most likely, worst case scenario, let's say in October, my month was to focus on YouTube, like to build better videos. So if I was to look at the best case, and this is probably an easy one, because the worst case scenario is that no one watches it.
Yeah.
Or actually, worst case scenario is it doesn't get done.
Yeah, you don't make any videos.
Don't make any video. That's actually the worst. Most likely is it goes up and I get a moderate amount of views. But the best case scenario is that I hit like Casey Neistat, Matt Diavella, which is, again, like, you're right. As soon as I say that, I'm like, that's not going to happen. Like, your brain immediately, you watch like a video by those guys and you're like, oh man, they're so good. They're so good. But often and I think like biases are such a huge part of every, like, productivity, time, performance. Like we get in our own way. And it's those there's an actual app. I talked about this when I did a talk about biases. Like, oh, there's no way I could, dedicate an entire day to this particular theme. Yeah. And then I actually do, like, well, when do you do laundry? Oh, I do it on Saturday. Well, when do you do your household shopping? Saturday. When do you, like, clean up your house? Saturday. I'm like, so Saturday's like a household day. Yeah. So would you say that you do all your house? Yeah. So it's a household. And they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, you already are theming a day. We already do this to a certain degree. We just have these biases that don't let us, think that way. And there's an app called Pocket Biases.
Okay.
And you can go, it's like pocketbiases.io, I think. And there are thousands of cognitive, like just biases in general, but cognitive biases, tons of them, that are impacting how we do things like set clear goals.
Yeah.
You know, imagine the best case scenario in a situation, you know, where it's like, there's no way that I can get a video view count like Matt D'Avella can. And I'm like, is that really true? Like, it's not impossible. The only way it's impossible is if I don't publish a video.
Yes.
Right?
Well, you don't publish, you don't do it regularly, you don't follow the same principles that he followed. If you're trying to be Matt D'Avella instead of trying to be Mike Vardy, then guess what? There's already a Matt D'Avella.
Well, and I think the other thing too is integrity plays a role.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you just said. If there are certain things that I will not use, and we'll keep the YouTube example. I will not title certain videos like certain ways to get like, I won't try to be, I will be clickbaity enough or plenty, but I won't be like I watched a video by him about like, it was almost like theming his time. And my brain went to me like, why Matt D'Avella is wrong about time management. I'm like, but he's not. But I can tell you that if I put that in there,
you get more clicks.
Right. So I think, where does that play a role? Because I mean, we're talking like as we
talk about ethics,
but so where does that? Because that may not necessarily seem unethical, right? In a business perspective, depending, because there is.
It depends. Values will inform your ethics. That's my next book. Will be on values, and but being clear on what you truly value, and values are the foundation of time management and productivity. Because if you truly understand what your values are, you know, for example, one thing that I truly value is being generous and leaving an impact. So if I put a filter through everything I do, and if I feel like I'm being generous and I am leaving an impact, I know that state of being and feeling those feelings, feeling like I'm leaving an impact, feeling like I'm being generous, it's the way I want to live my life, and it makes me happy. And so if I told, I don't know that I'd put a video up there, but if I'd say, what's this guy's name again?
Matt D'Avella. There'll be a link in the show notes.
Yeah,
By the way, Matt, you make great. If Matt's listening,
videos.
and we have friends, you have great videos. Love your stuff. Always have.
Yes,
he directed the documentary Minimalism.
Okay.
So if you've seen that movie, I don't know if you have. It's on Netflix.
I haven't. Yeah,
it's really good. He's a great filmmaker.
Yeah, anyway. So if we're talking about generosity and impact, if I feel like I could be super, I don't think it would be a generous thing to do to slander Matt D'Avella unless I had a relationship with him where we said, hey, look, let's create some conflict on the interweb and see if because it will create more traction for both of us. Okay, yeah, let's play around with that. And so I know that it would be helping Matt, it would be helping me, and then more people would be clicking, they'd be coming into our universe, we'd be creating an impact. Well, that's a filter I could go through, but if I was and it's thoughtful.
That's I think what happens too is people aren't like another, and I didn't mean to cut you off there, but another side example is Matt did a video called The Art of Saying No. And it was during the whole Mr. Beast was doing this tree campaign about planting a bunch of trees, and they wanted to plant it's a big YouTube campaign about, and again, this is another great example of why we should do things, because you have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But our bias is say, oh, surely you know what I'm talking about. Like the whole Gary Vaynerchuk, my daughter and TikTok thing earlier, where like, I know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, you do, but I can't assume that because it's in my own little bubble. I and we kind of inhabit that bubble to a degree. I'm like, oh, you know who he is. But anyway, Matt's video is called The Art of Saying No. And what he did was he incorporated, this is where if you're thoughtful, you can get creative about it. He said, I was asked to do something for planting trees and I had to say no. And he went through the art of saying no. He goes, so I'm not going to tell you to go to blah, 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 blah. Like, so which I'm like, brilliant. Like that's where I think like ingenuity, like you can still have your values, right? And you can still be responsible and control your response and be ethical about how you do it. Yeah. But you can do it in a way that's
also helpful.
Right.
And kind.
Right.
Yeah. And coming from the right place. And I think and again, it's being true to yourself and understanding what you truly value.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I want to talk about that saying no piece as we get close to wrapping up. Decisions.
So I have an appendix in there.
I know you do. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay.
So decision fatigue is huge.
Yeah.
Alvin Toffler, in his book Future Shock, talks about overchoice, right? And I've talked about this in talks about the idea of when you go to Costco to buy ketchup, you have three choices.
I just bought a new monitor. And
Right.
I was going through it yesterday. I was like, I just want to get a good monitor.
Right,
I don't want to pick through 50 of them.
You're on Amazon. They're serving you stuff. You're like, but you go to Costco to buy ketchup. You could do one of four things. You can buy the big tin. You can buy the 3-pack. You can buy the restaurant packs, or you don't buy ketchup. And that's if you like Heinz ketchup. If you don't like Heinz ketchup, that's it.
Sorry.
But legit.
But that's the beauty of Costco.
Right. Well, because what it does is that's why people, when they walk out of Costco, they're like, yeah, I spent $425 and I only went in there to buy, because they've eliminated decision fatigue so that you're not spending as much time looking at things and trying to figure out what to buy. So you're not getting analysis paralysis. You're getting, like, you're moving things through. They're eliminating that they're making decisions easier.
That's fascinating.
It's pretty.
That's smart.
Now, you talk about the decision tool that you have here, because people often say, well, like when I'm doing theming days, they're like, well, how do I know what days to theme? And I said, well, you always work backwards from your certainties. Like, look at your days and figure out what, like, if you know that your kids are home on, like, I know my kids are home on Monday, or possibly home on Mondays and Fridays because of school days. I'm not going to make Friday or Monday my podcast day. That would be stupid, because at some point it's going to get, there's going to be some kind of interruption or corruption to that day. Yeah. So Wednesday, are our kids ever off school on a Wednesday other than summer holidays or spring break? No.
Rarely.
So, and if they are, it's because they're probably sick, right? So in which case that's completely out of the ordinary. So for me, it makes sense. Every Wednesday I do podcasting, which means that I have interviews and all that stuff and make it work that way. So that's one way that when I'm looking at this, I think that there's elements that your decision tool could be used to apply to, like, choosing daily themes and picking projects. So can you go over that a little bit? I know that, I mean, there's a lot more in this book that we can get to, but I think that that's a huge tool, especially when it comes to making the right choice around where to spend your time and attention.
That's big in productivity. And so this decision tool is designed for bigger decisions, possibly life decisions. And I was introduced to this tool initially when I had a scholarship opportunity to get my master's degree at Stanford University at the Petroleum Engineering Department, build out some biodiesel infrastructure. So that was a great opportunity. Or I could train and compete at the 2008 Olympics. And so I was sitting there and thinking, these are two fabulous opportunities, and both would be really exciting for me. And I was trying to figure out a way to make the best decision, and from a mindset of optimism, because fear can often infiltrate our decisions and cause us to make lesser decisions and worse choices. You're pointing at the Green Lantern
stuff everywhere, because the enemy of the Green Lantern is fear.
It's fear. Yeah. So it's okay.
That's why it's everywhere.
So let's get rid of fear. So this decision tool is about getting rid of fear.
Right.
And it goes all the way back to Aristotle, and probably pre-Aristotle, but I think he's the first one to record it, which is doing a pros and cons list. So you pick two things that you're choosing between. So let's say the Olympics, I'm going to go to the Olympics, or master's degree at Stanford University. What are the pros and cons of each of those two choices? So you write pros and cons under the Olympic column, then you write pros and cons under the master's degree scholarship column. And so you're finding, pros for the Olympics, I could win an Olympic gold medal. I've got a lot of good friends. Cons, the outcome is uncertain. I could spend the next 2 years and I went to the Olympics in 2004, and we had a
You're doing it in public.
You're doing it in public. You're being watched. You're being judged. And so there's things that are negative, things that are positive. And then on the other side, you're saying, okay, pros and cons too of this master's degree. And then you look at it and you take all of the cons and you turn the cons into positives on the other side. So the fact that I'm doing my Olympic thing and I'm doing it in public, and people will watch my successes or my failures. And I think that's a con, because I don't want to be doing this in public as much. I'm going to put that over to the master's degree, and that's a pro, that now I'm doing this in private. And I've got some more privacy, and that really matters to me. And that serves, and values really come into play here. That the things that you truly value out of life and life's experiences and results. And so then you might have some duplicate statements, because a con on one side might be a pro. So then you eliminate the duplicate statements. So then you have a list of pros: pro Olympics, pro master's degrees. And then you look at the two lists and you go through each point and you rank each point from 1 to 10. And you say, This point, you know, you know the you know the ability to train and go to the Olympics, I'm going to rate that out as an 8. And I've got really good friends, I'm going to put that as a 10. And on the other side, because I can do it in private, I'll put that at a 5, because that's what I feel like it ranks. And you
10
rank them
being
all.
the highest, right?
10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. And then you go to both sides, and then you add them up, and then you look at the scores. And if and the one with the highest score wins. And if the score is higher than 10 points, then you really know that you're on the right track. And really what this process does is it forces you to think through all contingencies. It forces you to be positive, to remove the fear bias, and to make the best choice, with optimism as your fuel.
It's a responsible choice.
It's a responsible choice.
You're making a responsible choice.
Well, and we talked about providence too, and making a choice in this way will actually enact more providence in your life, because it will be partnered with faith and bold action, and so you'll actually have better results when you make choices out of optimism versus choices out of fear.
It's Tim Ferriss has that fear setting thing, which I think encapsulates some of that, because he uses fear as a weapon. As opposed to a crutch, right? So, But what I like about this too is that you take those cons and you try to turn them into pros in the other, like you flip it a bit, which I think is interesting. It's just, and to your point, people listening to this right now will clearly, this takes time. It forces you to take time and think about it and be thoughtful about it. So like you said,
this is a 2 to 3 day process.
Yeah, you're not going to do this in a you're not going to say, should I eat fat, dinner, how is this how I'm going to eat dinner? You're not going to use this for something like that. But what you might use it for is, okay, should I become vegetarian? Or should I become vegan? Versus eating meat, what are the pros, what are the cons, and figure it out, right? So you could use it for things like that as well.
Yeah, for things like that, new job, relationships. Should I stay with this person, leave this person?
Schools that your kids might want to go to, you could do this with your kids.
Yep. And a big part of it is to write it down, and to go through the process properly. You actually have a conversation with someone and talk through the points. Spend at least 1 or 2 sleep cycles so that your sleep brain can process through it, and you can gain more clarity on what path you want to take. And I know even I've done this as a workshop and run people through this, and you give them 45 minutes to go through this process on a big decision they're making through their, in their life. And the interesting comments that come afterwards is that, most of the people say, yeah, this is the decision I was leaning towards anyways, but now I just have the confidence to jump in.
Right. Right.
And this is, you tend to have...
You probably would have done that with the gold medal thing. Let's be honest.
Probably.
Most people would go, really? Yes, they're both great opportunities, but not, representing your country on the Olympic stage is, we hear this in sports a lot. The best players in sport are, even the best of the best sometimes don't make it, because it's just such a small piece. But I would imagine some people go, well, why were you even putting it through that? But if you're mindful about that and thoughtful and responsible about it, then you're going to, then you're fully committed, right? I think that's, instead of making just I can win, I can compete for the gold medal. Absolutely, I'm in. And then all of a sudden, those things that creep in that you didn't expect.
Well, doubt. You want to eliminate as much doubt as possible.
Right.
And try to keep as optimistic a mindset as possible. Because anything that you choose to do that's difficult will have doubt. It's inevitable. You will. We talked about failure at the start. You will have failure. You will have doubt. You will question your path and what you're trying to accomplish. So, if you can address those before the journey begins, then you'll have less holding you back, and you'll be able to be in flow more often and enjoy the journey more and get a better result at the end.
See, normally this would be where I'd end the show, but I have one more question for you that pertains, I think, to, and we'll wrap up after this question. The lifespan, when I say lifespan, the career span of an athlete is limited. We talked about limited goals. that probably played a role in your decision to compete on the Olympic stage, for sure. But knowing that there's a finite amount of time, because this relates, like, where you can compete at such a high level, knowing that when you're starting out, you may not be at that high level, so you have to work to get there. And this is coming back to what I'm, when I watched that documentary For Your Soul, like, this guy worked and worked and worked. He was incredibly fit, but again, the ability to be able to do certain things at certain ages, you're just not going to be able to do it anymore. Like, the body, the mind and the body have a connection, but that starts to dissipate a bit over time. For people who are listening that may have kids or that are athletes that are like, I got to do this now, I got to do this, I got to, they either push themselves really hard, maybe without having some, like, the measure of patience versus performance, I think is what I want to get to here, is knowing that there's a scope. How do you respond, and how do you practice, like, patience in conjunction with the idea that there is a limit as to, like, there's a shelf life. Like, how did you balance that? Because, I mean, you've been able to continue on, and a lot of athletes don't have plans after, or it's purported. Yeah. I mean, we probably hear more about the ones that don't, but there's probably way more that do, and we just don't hear about it. But there's that window, and knowing that the window will close, how do you balance, like, how do you have harmony with patience and performance in that area? Is that something that you think you can speak to?
Well, the Olympic cycle was interesting because it's a 4-year cycle.
Right.
I was able to have an element of patience on the path because I was noticing an uptick in performance, and I was continually improving. So that kept me motivated along the way. When I was in high school, I had a great coach, Walt Benko, who was my high school coach. He said, Adam, you've got this potential to go to the Olympics if you want, but I don't want you to work too hard right now. I want you to actually do other sports. You could be a great high school athlete, but this isn't your time. Your peaking time will be in your mid to late 20s, and you're 16 right now. So let's back off. Play your other sport, play football, play basketball. And if you really want to do this rowing thing, in your 20s, when you're in university, you can really start hardening on, and you can possibly move to the national team, and that's when you'll train, and then you'll have a decade that you can train really hard.
It's pretty attuned. That guy's
yes.
pretty attuned.
He's wise coach. And so that patience was started by having a great coach off the start.
And you talk about coaching in the book too.
Yes, I do.
Having a coach, so it's nice.
The importance of having a coach, the importance of having a mentor, and then through the process, there was an element of, in my first Olympic cycle, I talk about it in being the chapter 5, being a pro. There's an element of self-hate and misery, and that that comes with impatience. That when you're younger, I think you just have to endure if you're an ambitious person, and I think what I talk about in the book is that's okay. It's okay to endure that, especially if you are ambitious. Understand that that's normal, and be okay with it, and just sit within it and endure it, and know that as you mature and have more perspective, you'll be able to move through it. So I'd say it's to have patience often is partnered with perspective and understanding that there is a time frame, and perspective only comes with maturity and time. Because I'll talk to another metaphor that I bring into this book, which is rowing across the ocean, and it's so freaking ironic in that I'm hopping in a rowboat and I'm willingly taking the slowest route possible across the ocean. And now that I'm in the rowboat and I'm 10 days into an 100-day journey, I want to get to the other side as fast as possible. And that's just, I think there's an element of human nature that is that when you have a task and when you have an endpoint, And even I found that even within this book,
Writing
the book, there's a large element of like angst and anxiety because you visualize the endpoint and you want the endpoint to be there now because you can see it. Yet you have to put in the work, and you have to grind through the ups and downs of the labor. So your patience is a great thing to shoot for, but if you're not feeling patient, I would just say that's okay, and that's normal, and that's possibly a very good thing because it shows that you're ambitious, that you want something, that you're hungry. So use that energy wisely and try to channel it into productive means.
Clear goals. Making better decisions.
Yes.
And following the 12 strategies exceptional people use to do the work and make success happen.
Exactly.
Which is in this book, The Responsibility Ethic. Adam, this has been fantastic. Where can people pick up the book, and where can people keep up with you and your work?
Yeah, so they pick up the book on Amazon. I'm recording the Audible book next week. I'm not supposed to timestamp this.
That's okay.
So as
I said Disney Plus earlier, remember?
Yeah, right. So this is the Audible book should be recorded by the time that this goes out there.
Yeah.
So there'll be an Audible book. There's it's on Kindle, Kobo. Yeah, Kobo.
Kobo, the Canadian thing. Even we Canadians cannot pronounce it.
Yeah,
that's how much it's widely spread.
It's on Indigo. Just look for The Responsibility Ethic, Adam Kreek. Internet, Google.
It's all there.
It's all there. Go to the show notes.
The show notes, everything will be in the show notes.
Yeah, show notes. Just go to Mike's website.
Just look at your phone right now and scroll up and see all those links there. Just touch those.
Click. Yeah.
No, you don't care. The thing is, you don't click anymore. Someone mentioned
clicking so labor.
Well, no, because you're not really clicking unless you're on a desktop. If you're on a desktop, yes, or a laptop, you'll click. But if you're on a phone, well, it's like the YouTube thing. Smash that like button. I'm like, no, don't wreck your phone. Just touch it. Press it gently.
Or just press Siri. Siri, where can I buy Adam Kreek's book, The Responsibility Ethic?
Hold your phone up to your phone and do that right now. Adam, thanks for joining me today on the Productivityist podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Big thanks to Adam Kreek for joining me on the program today. You can pick up his book, The Responsibility Ethic, 12 Strategies Exceptional People Use to Do the Work and Make Success Happen, where all books are sold. But also, we put links in the show notes, which you can find at productivityist.com/podcast 282. So be sure to check that out. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate a rating and or review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this program. And if you don't want to miss a single episode, then subscribe to the show where you are listening to podcasts right now. There are over 280 episodes in the archives and plenty more to come. I've got some great guests lined up. Michael Hyatt is one of them. John Zaratsky, who co-wrote Make Time. Courtney Carver is coming up very soon. She's got a new book coming out. Virtual bevy of beautiful guests coming up on the show. So I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast today, wherever you are listening to podcasts. That's it for this week. I'd like to thank our sponsors, and if you want to support the show, support our sponsors as well. Until next time, I'm Mike Vardy, the host of the Productivityist podcast, reminding you to stop guessing and start going. See you later.